Or not block them for so about 30 seconds, I'll call us in.
Okay.
Oh, shoot.
Not the bad.
Okay, we got 5:30, so gonna call us back into order for the budget committee.
Start with that.
That's right, so
You never pay, you know, that's how we did.
thank you. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, thank you. So do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? And if not, do I have a motion to, I'll make that motion to move. Jeff, that move to adopt it, do we have a second?
I second.
And a second by Asa, so we adopt it or agenda. I don't see any community other than one back here.
There's
Other than that, there's somebody on the line, I believe, Todd, or whoever it's on with. I don't know if that person has an interest in commenting.
You can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't have any interest.
Okay, terrific, we'll move ahead then. So at this point, I see a stack of papers, Sherry, I presume these are a few corrections.
They are the
So
corrections.
we're into the budget overview and review time, so.
Yes.
Start with Sherry.
So these are the corrections from your guys' great thorough review
You're welcome.
of the document. I appreciate it. Pages are numbered and I didn't want to print the whole document and I was trying to save money, trying to be frugal for the budget committee. But anyway, the page numbers, page 4 in the what we believe section, there was a typo in the first sentence. There was a comma in here somewhere that,
The problems.
yes, that's, that didn't belong there. So we took that out. Page 10, we fixed the apostrophe in sisters to show possession instead of. Right, that's how that was.
Yeah.
Okay. And page 16, we fixed the case for district in the first line. Page 22, there was a question in there about where the donations had come from, and that was a good catch because it stemmed from a coding error this year that I was using. So that should have been in a rental code. So I made that correction. I took it out of donations and added it to the rental amount. And then page 24, we changed the primary K4 to primary K5 as it should be. Those were all the changes.
Well, again, for our members here, many contributing to the questions. I really want to commend Jerry and turning that around and very encouraging Amy and whoever else had a part of that, but in any event, I did appreciate you guys getting that back, so now I'd like to open it to the committee if there's any kind of follow-up questions. So you saw the question as they went in, you saw the responses from Sherry and team. And at that point, that may have generated a follow-up question. So anyone have a follow-up question? That means the budget is all gonna be fine.
Yes.
One question, do you have any more
Yes.
information today than when you prepared the budget? That would impact it if you were preparing them? Like, in any,
I would say no, we have, I mean, the thing, two data points that I would say that because enrollment is a big part of what we do. We're concerned about our kindergarten roundup numbers. That's a concern. However, we also have been very actively looking at our SEO program and how we recruit to get folks who have live-in sisters but are choosing other programs through homeschool to re-engage those. And we're having some really good conversations there. So it feels like those could offset each other. So, I mean, that's the only thing those are the only two that we know that would change anything. But again, they seem like they could potentially offset each other as far as our total enrollment numbers in the next year.
and you budgeted 1160.
1160. Yep.
Is there any benefit to budgeting for over enrollment? Like, does it allow you, like with fund accounting, I know you need to have the buckets there to
Yeah.
pull from,
And you're typically conservative.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the questions, some of
Yeah.
us, of why are you budgeting for 1160 when our numbers aren't
Yeah.
there now that you've seen kindergarten enrollment.
Yeah. Well, I also think that we've, there's 75 kids in the homeschool pod that we've had some pretty good success in conversations with. Yes, typically we look to be a little more conservative because if you're over, then you get a negative May message versus the opposite. If you're under, you get the opposite. I think we've consistently, minus last year, had success looking at that 20 students above what our actual was. So we felt pretty good about that. Again, that's the big wild card in the whole equation. I mean, even this year, we could have been at 1,200 easily.
right?
And we're not because we have, at least in one of the cohorts, we have about 75 kids in a homeschool pod and 30, so there's, I think we've done so I'm optimistic about our movement in that conversation with families. But that's still the question mark. Enrollment is, often is. And for us, 20 makes a big difference.
Following along, I don't know if anyone recalls, looking at the enrollment reports. Getting way ahead of myself, but, we projected last year that we'd have 75 kindergartners come in.
Mhm.
Do anyone recall what, the kindergarten roundup had last year? I know it was a big number last year.
Yeah, I think the initial was 62.
60,
Yeah,
okay.
I think.
That was that round.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's turned into 75 is what you're saying?
No, it actually turned into 80.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is, there's a lot of people, if they don't live here in April, or if it's their first kid, they don't know to come to Roundup, I mean, it.
Yeah.
Or if it's their second kid, they've already been through
Right,
it,
that's
so
what
they
I
don't.
mean.
There's a lot of so that's that's the only new data that we have that could impact one way or another.
We talked a lot about the homeschool kids this morning, but we
Yeah.
didn't necessarily talk about the superintendent's copy for the three of us who were there, but are those kids already enrolled in other districts? Or are they just like totally off these budget stuff?
Some of them are in the Scappoose open. I mean, so some of them have expressed that they'd rather keep their dollars locally if they can get the same service here.
Yeah.
So that's why, I just don't know what that number is going to look like. Joe had a meeting today with about 20 homeschool families, and they said they each know at least one or two or three more that, in conversation that could be connected. And the one said, yeah, that there's a Friday homeschool pod that's got about 75 kids in it. So it doesn't mean that there are some folks that just won't reconnect with public school. So again, that's the wild card is those offsetting each other. Will more kids show up in kindergarten and actually even typically when our numbers in kindergarten, because some people don't agree with the full day kindergarten, then we'll get by first or second grade, we'll see those numbers increase as well. So it's those exactly are hitting on the ones that are the biggest wild cards for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you still feel like 1160 is conservative?
Well, if I'm being optimistic, yeah. I mean, if we gathered, you know, half of the homeschool kids, then we would be probably at 1180. I mean, now there's some outlay for expenses with the programs that provides, but so I mean that just like this year at one point I thought we might start even above 1200, but again we had folks choose some other options and uh, we now have laid out a good protocol for them.
Is there a chance of the state coming in with more money? Like, I feel like
Not
that's
in-
what you always
yeah.
do.
Not in this biennium. The word is, I know Portland Public's lobbying, if you read any of the paper articles, that they're lobbying pretty hard for them to tap into the state school fund to mitigate, but we're already into this biennium. The next biennium, maybe, talking about full, more funding for special education and some of the things, including just looking at quality education model and whether they provide us more per kid, because they haven't kept pace with inflationary trends and cost drivers. So I think the best opportunity is the next biennium. I wouldn't anticipate in this that we're going to see it. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if they do something, that's a positive, but I don't think it would be, above the 5% buffer that we really need to worry about.
Well,
as
that's
far as
where, like in
impact.
past years, I've always asked, all right, what's the first thing to come back in of all the things you've cut?
Mhm.
What's the first one that?
Well, we're still trying to solve those problems. I think we're trying to look at some reductions and see if we can, like, bill for Medicare, Medicaid, and offset some costs to include some of our nursing services. Right, we're tapping into the LSP and some of the stuff we cut out of this. So we have some IA services coming out, instructional assistant services coming out of the LSP. So we're already trying to maximize the opportunities, looking at other fund sources, also. So.
Kurt and Sherry, along the same avenue here about the funding that changes. I've noticed on the state website, there's been changes in the
The estimate.
adjustments that's been happening in the ADM for all the districts in the state, that kind of thing. As well as the allotments. I mean, is there anything significant going on there?
No, I keep hoping every time I get one of those notifications, it's like, maybe they found something. No, ours has stayed pretty level, maybe a few $1,000s difference from here.
Yeah.
Not mistaken.
Yeah.
Now, so Jeff.
I hate to ask this because it's a crazy question. If there are people out there who would like to have a half-day kindergarten, could we somehow facilitate that?
Well, we have our ed options already. The question is, depending on what the challenge is trying to set that service up for them, right? If they want, the way the schedule sets up, it would be hard to say, okay, you're going to get math and language arts, or you're going to get music and PE, or right. The way the rotating schedule goes, it's pretty hard to do that. We have some folks who do some online service and then take advantage of those options, and they do some of that work through at the building with some supports. So the answer is there are opportunities there, and that's part of what we're trying to communicate out with the ideas of Ignite and blended enrollment and also the looking at the homeschool program. So I think we're getting a lot more good positive feedback, and people understand even the letter in the nugget even though that lady, I think there was a breakdown in communication between her and our counselors about what that means. Basically, if you're claimed somewhere else, then you have to pay tuition. The only way we can not charge you tuition is if we're getting money for your kid, because we have to pay for the FTE. So somewhere there was a breakdown in the communication, but the good news is that information is getting out there. So.
Yeah, one final question, that's my side. And I think when we spoke briefly, there wasn't an impact, but with the executive order from the governor about educational.
Yep.
Do we foresee that having a
Not at this point. I mean, the question will be moving forward conversations. It depends on what the final orders are, right? And so there's some question for those that followed or didn't follow the order. The governor made the executive order, eliminated the fact that we can count 30 hours of contact time for conferences with families, and that we can count 30 hours of professional development with staff as part of our time. The governor's executive order excluded that. And then the state board turned around and said, nope, we're kicking, you can count that. Now, there's some discussion as whether the Board of Education can do that. But it comes down to the final rules, which will be issued to us at the end of summer, right? Now, the good news is we have until the 27-28 school year to make our plan if we get the rules and it says something different. Now, we did the math. If we added 12 minutes to our school day, that gets 30 hours in a year, right? So part of it is we kept a similar busing schedule when we were at this end of town and had busing back and forth. So there are some things we can do to get some of that time back. If we look at conferences and how we do that, we've tried to support our staff. Those work days are not just gimme days. Those are really important days for staff. So if we had to look at the number of work days, we believe we could get, through those two mechanisms, get to where we needed to, if that's the way it was. Now that's the interesting thing is that, this has been the state requirement for decades, right? And I brought this up in the meeting earlier. It's a political year and we have a race for the governorship. And so now there's a big issue with this. Not to go on my rant that I went earlier, but we have the second hardest graduation rates in the nation, right? If you compare them. And so there's a lot of politicking around what that looks like and what that means and the funding. So I'm all for accountability, but it's an interesting, I would say it's more important what you do with the time also. And we've shown that we've improved achievement and outcomes in the last decade with the time that we have. So I'd say we're doing some pretty good work. And as I said earlier as well, but if the state came up with funding to fund us for 12 more days, would I want 12 more student contact days for kids? Absolutely. We could do that, but we'd have to fund it and pay our people at that rate. So, so right now, no, but we'll see what the final rules are. Yeah.
The other follow-up question?
Well, just going back to connecting with the kids that have left, and so I would assume that's probably a pretty high priority right now for the district. Is that priority number one, and engaging?
Yeah.
Because when do they need to enroll?
Well, the bottom line is they can enroll at any point, but if we're trying to programmatically create something, knowing what that looks like is interesting to know. We talked about this earlier as well with Grow. There were some kids who thought they didn't need to enroll in high school and they could walk. Well, if you didn't re-enroll in high school, you don't graduate from us. So you don't get to walk. They just thought they could finish all their credits and then come back and walk for us. Well, if you don't finish here, you don't get a walk, right? And which we inform them as they go as well, but they don't want to hear that. And then as Reagan shared, we had some kids who came back and finished their trimester and got some great growth scholarships as well. So, I think it's also promoting the messaging around what it means to be in the system and be a part of the system. And we're getting more positive feedback with that. It is an interesting, again, not to repeat the conversations earlier, but after COVID, everybody wanted to be back live. And that's where we saw our enrollment, move up. And then for whatever reason, political, personal, whatever, we've seen less of that. Our feeling is typically when we connect them and they recognize that we do things pretty good and we're pretty reasonable to work with, that we tend to get people back a little more. So if they start with a class or two, then eventually we get them in the system full time, typically, not always. And some like the blended model and just stay with that because it gives them more flexibility. So it just depends. But yes, we've been really doing a lot of work in that area.
The only thing you have control over.
What's that?
It's the only thing you have control
Yes,
over, really,
yes.
as far as
Yeah.
getting any income.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? Well, the budget committee, we have one basic task, and that's to approve a budget. So we do have a couple of motions that need to be passed in order to do that. First is to actually approve the budget, the second is to approve the taxes. Now, I have them written here specifically, and they need to be stated in the record exactly as written here, so that meets all the auditor requirements. So I'm going to read the first approving the budget motion. And if you'd like to make that motion, just say, I move that motion, and that will cover us. So I'm going to start with that one, unless there's a question or concern about the process. Okay, so this is the motion for approving the budget. I move that the budget committee of the Sister School District approve the budget for the 2026-27 fiscal year in the amount of $36,915,111.
So moved.
And so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second. I have a second. At that point, is there any discussion then on that motion? So if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion has passed. We're moving to the second, probably most important motion about approving the taxes. Where it comes from. So this is the motion for approving the taxes. I move that the Sister School District Budget Committee approve taxes for the 2026-27 fiscal year at the rate of 4.0997 cents per $1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes. And that should have said not cents but dollars, $4.0997 per $1,000 assessed value for operating purposes. 75 cents per $1,000 in local option taxes, and then the amount of $3,531,255 for the payment of bond and principal interest. Anyone want to make that motion?
I can move that again.
Do we have a second? And Don has seconded that. Any discussion on that motion? So at that point, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has passed. So at this point, I would remind us that June 3rd, there's a regular board meeting at which there will be a budget hearing. And so at the budget hearing at that time, we encourage especially appointing members and board members of the year. They would like to come and make any comments on the budget, and that would be a terrific opportunity to do it. Generally, the chair, and I've been doing it the last few years, comes and makes a comment just to put in the record. Process was, I don't really think there was any huge issues, that kind of thing. And so I will do that part, but again, you would invite anyone in your meetings, budget committee member, to comment at that time at the budget hearing. So is there anything else for the good of the order? If not, then I declare the budget process of this budget meeting adjourned.
Thank you guys for all your help.
I'd like to thank Sherry and Kurt for putting this thing together.
Yeah.
A lot of time. I think Amy had something to do.
No, it's just.
Amy made it look so
Yeah.
pretty.